Have you ever really thought about what it takes to create something that lasts? I'm not just talking about a hit product, but a company that truly stands the test of time. Well, back in 1995, Jim Collins wrote this landmark book, Built to Last, that tried to crack that exact code. But now, almost 30 years later, we gotta ask, does its wisdom still hold up, or is it an outdated idea? Let's dig in.
Okay, so the entire foundation of this built-to-last idea, it really boils down to one powerful metaphor. And it's all about the difference between being a genius who can tell you the time and being a genius who can actually build a clock.
So what does that actually mean? Well, a time teller, that's the brilliant visionary, right? The person who can look at the sun and the stars and tell you the exact time. Super impressive. But the clock builder? They're on another level. They create a system, a clock, that can tell the time forever, long after they're gone. And the book's big argument is that the most visionary founders, they're clock builders.
And this quote just nails it. For guys like David Packard of Hewlett-Packard, the ultimate product wasn't some oscilloscope or printer. Nope, it was the Hewlett-Packard Company. The organization itself was the masterpiece.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because this just blows up that whole myth of the killer idea. Get this, most of these legendary companies, from HP to Sony, they didn't start with some revolutionary product. In fact, Sony's first product was a total flop. They focused on building a great organization first because they were confident that a whole stream of great products would eventually come from it.
All right, so if it's not about that first big product idea, then what's the secret sauce? Well, Collins says it's all about the company's soul. He calls it its core ideology.
Think of the core ideology as the company's North Star. It's got two parts. First, you have core values, the stuff you believe in, deep down. And second, a core purpose, the reason you even exist, beyond just making a profit. It's the one thing that holds everything together, even when markets and technology are changing like crazy.
And these companies, they don't just, slap these values on a poster in the break room. No way. They build these intense, almost cult-like cultures around them. Just think about Disney, where employees aren't employees, they're cast members, putting on a performance. They promote leaders from the inside who get the values, and they are relentless about pushing for progress. Kind of like how 3M gives its people time to just experiment on their own wild ideas.
And a huge way they drive that progress with something Collins gave this amazing name, a BHAG. That stands for a big, hairy, audacious goal. And this isn't just some quarterly target. We're talking about a clear, compelling mission that gets the entire company fired up, something that could take years, maybe even decades to pull off.
And this just goes to show that even the biggest journeys start with a single step. This was Sam Walton's very first BHAG for one single dime store. Seems small now. Back then, it was hugely ambitious, it was clear, and it totally set the stage for the monster that Walmart would become. He just kept setting bigger and bigger BHAGs.
Okay, so that all sounds pretty solid, right? Build a clock, find your core ideology, set some audacious goals. Simple enough. But that was then. We live in a world of insane technological speed. Does this slow, deliberate clock-building approach even make sense anymore?
And that's the big question for today, isn't it? When AI can spit out thousands of lines of code in a day, does the slow, careful work of clock building actually become a weakness, a liability?
Here we have a take from Chris Latner, who is a true modern-day clock builder himself. I mean, this is the guy who created systems like LLVM and Swift that basically power our entire digital world. And he's worried. He's worried that this mad dash for AI-driven speed is threatening the very idea of craftsmanship, that deep architectural thinking you need to build things that actually last.
This slide just lays out the two warring mindsets perfectly. On one side, you've got software craftsmanship, taking the time to understand the fundamentals, focusing on solid architecture, developing true mastery. And on the other, well, some are calling it vibe coding. Basically treating AI like a slot machine, just pulling the lever and hoping for the best. You're delegating your own understanding, which, for a developer, could be a total career killer.
And let me tell you, the pressure is real. When you've got CEOs and venture capitalists bragging about massive code output as the only metric that matters, it pushes developers to just patch things up, to make the symptoms go away, instead of building a solid foundation. It's a direct assault on the whole idea of building the company as the ultimate product.
But look, it's not just the speed of tech that's poking holes in the built-to-last theory. There's an even bigger, more fundamental question we have to ask. What actually happened to the original visionary companies from the book?
I mean, these were the titans, the absolute gold standard of enduring success that the research held up. These were names that you just associated with excellence and, well, being built to last. Right. That's the really uncomfortable follow-up question. Because when you look at that list today, well, some of those giants have seriously stumbled. Some have been broken up, others have just completely lost their top dog status.
And this brings us right to the heart of the critique. As the business writer David K. Hurst points out here, if your framework was perfect at explaining why companies were successful in the past, but it can't predict them stumbling in the future, you have to wonder how useful it really is.
So this raises a huge statistical question. Was the framework just looking at companies when they were at their absolute peak, and then naturally they regress to the mean? What goes up must come down to a more average level of performance over time. The critique basically says maybe these principles are great at describing past success, but they're not a crystal ball for predicting future greatness.
So where does that leave us? Is the whole framework just useless? Well, not so fast. Because tucked away inside Collins's own work is this more nuanced idea that might just solve this whole puzzle. This tension between being stable and changing, between the old rules and the new.
He calls it the genius of the and. It's this killer idea that truly great companies don't choose between things like stability or progress. They figure out how to have both. They refuse to live in what he calls the tyranny of the or, and instead embrace the genius of the and.
And here's how it actually works. It's a two-step. First, you preserve your core. You passionately protect your values, your purpose. That stuff is sacred, it never changes. But, and this is the key, at the exact same time, you stimulate relentless progress and change in everything else. Your strategies, your products, how you operate, everything is up for grabs.
This Walmart example just illustrates it perfectly. They were religiously, fanatically disciplined about their core ideology, customer service. But they were also irreverent and kind of crazy, encouraging wild experiments and, yes, even having their founder do the hula on Wall Street to make good on a bet. They embraced both the discipline and the craziness, core stability and dynamic progress. The genius of the and.
And that brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? The principles from Built to Last might not be some magic formula, but they force us to ask a timeless question. In this age of insane, rapid change and powerful new tools, are you focused on the short-term game of just telling today's time? Or are you taking on the much harder, but much more meaningful work of building a clock that will last? The choice is yours.